Hey, what's going on, everyone? Romeo here. In this video, I want to talk about how being a Spanish beginner actually costs you money. The problem with being a Spanish beginner is that the term beginner is not regulated. And because it's not regulated, anyone can slap a title on some type of material and say that the material is for beginners. In a few minutes, I'll give you an example of exactly what I'm talking about. But I want to talk about what it means to be a beginner. I suppose a beginner, in my mind, is someone who's just starting off with the language. But the problem with that is that you can start from anywhere. You can start by listening to television. You can start by listening to podcasts, music, or you can start by reading or taking a formal course in the language. And so because anyone who is starting is a beginner, anyone could just make material for beginners, right? But I believe the only place where the word beginner is kind of regulated is with the common European framework of reference for languages. And so the CEFR has various levels in which they describe fluency. In fact, that's why my channel is called 1 Year to Fluency, because I firmly believe that if you follow the plan that I suggest on my channel, you can reach a level of fluency that's within one of the CEFR levels. And I'm suggesting that you can reach B1 or B2. But let's dive into what these different levels are. And after we dive into these levels, I can prove to you how being a beginner costs you money. So here's a page on the internet. Again, I came across this page. This is the Spanish Institute. And so they are pulling from the different levels. And I brought up this page because this page actually has a user-friendly way to explain the different levels that are part of the CEFR. So if you see here, it says that beginner, the title beginner, they consider beginner someone who can understand and use very basic expressions to satisfy concrete needs. They can introduce themselves and others, ask and answer questions about personal details, and they can interact simply as long as other person speaks slowly and clearly. This is what a beginner is. Once you get out of this stage, you're no longer a beginner, and then you are considered an improver, and you are A2. In this case, you can understand sentences and frequently use expressions related to areas of most intermediate areas such as shopping, family, employment, etc. You can read the rest for yourself. Then we have B1 intermediate, who can understand the main points of clear standard input on familiar matters regularly encountered in work, school, leisure related topics. So anyway, so I'll link this page to the description of this video to give you some examples of what this A1, A2, and B1 levels are. Here's another page. And this page gives some examples of what A1 can be considered. So if you are someone that can listen to ¿Dónde está el baño? And you can say hola, me llama, these are beginner level phrases. So at this point, you're a beginner. But once you go into A2, you can say other things such as trabajo en una tienda y estudio español los fines de semana. All right? You're no longer a beginner because according to this framework. B1, you can say things such as el fin de semana pasado visité a unos amigos y fuimos a la playa, right? This past weekend, I visited a few friends and I went to the beach. You can read el artículo explica cómo mejorar tu salud con una dieta equilibrada, right? And you can write things. At this stage, again, you're not a beginner. You're in the upper immediate stage if you can follow these examples. So this is a quick way to figure out what your fluency level is according to this framework. Now, all of that being said, this is why I say it's easy to exploit a beginner, someone who considers themselves a beginner, don't know what they are looking for, and it can end up costing them money. In fact, it ended up costing me money because when I considered myself a beginner, I'm going to show you what I bought. So, transition. This book right here, Spanish Short Stories for Beginners, can be found on Amazon. And it has over 1,200 reviews, I believe, on Amazon. But this book that says it's for beginners, according to the CEFR, is no way considered a beginner book. Let me explain why. If you go into just the first chapter of this book, here's the first chapter. If you go into the first chapter of this book, Paseo por el Parque, the book, or this chapter, just chapter 1, covers the present tense, the past tense, the imperfect tense, and the subjunctive in various forms. Not only does it cover those different tenses, it also covers indirect Spanish objects, direct Spanish objects, and reflexive verbs. So, my opinion is that those things aren't really something that a beginner would be familiar with. But because the term beginner is not regulated, I suppose they can get away with calling this book a beginner book. Let me give you a few examples. So one of the first examples, and one can argue that that you should know it if you're a beginner, is the use of the reflexive right here. All right, y este se ríe. Right, this. What is this sentence? Fidro ladra y mueve su cola nuevamente al ver la felicidad de su amo y este se ríe. So this sentence is basically saying that Fido, the dog, barks and moves his tail upon seeing the happiness of his master, and the master laughs. Right? So there's a use of the reflexive right here. If you go on in the page, you can see another sentence where the use of a direct object is used, right? Lo calma, right? Let's see if we can find another example. So here's an example of a use of an indirect object, all right? Fido regresa, pero Fido no le presta atención. Another use of a indirect or direct object here, right? Pedrito, the little boy, knows that he should reach him or catch him, talking about the dog in this case. And there are numerous examples in this book where I would say that a beginner won't be familiar with these type of sentence structures. I'll find one more where I can find the use of the subjunctive. Here's an example of the use of using the future tense with a direct object. Te mantendremos en la oficina. Oh, going back to the first page, right? In the second paragraph of this story, it says, es un día muy feliz para Pedrito, se siente muy a gusto, su mamá está en casa, pero ya le dio permiso para que se fuera con Fido a caminar. Like this sentence right here, someone who is a real beginner, like that will mess them up, because not only does it use the subjunctive, it also has the indirect object and it has the past tense. So all of these examples is just it makes up a bigger picture of how someone can create an item, say that it is for beginners. A beginner who's just starting the language purchases this book and is completely lost, right? Luckily, there are still some readers that a beginner supposedly can start with, right? Only Richards doesn't necessarily say that his book is for beginners. I believe this is, I guess he does. He says this book for beginners. So again, he said this book is for beginners, but this book too, I don't need to go through the examples. Like if you go through this book covers the past tense in the imperfect form and the predicate form. And so I don't know what I would think about this. Like, you tell me what you think about this. Like, what is a beginner to you? What does it mean to you to be a beginner? And if you're a beginner, what is it that you should know if you're a beginner? Would you expect to know the past tense? And I understand like the situation that these creators are facing is that again, there's no regulation of what it means a beginner. So if you want to create content for the beginner, then I suppose you just create the books that are out there. So anyway, what's the solution to this? I suppose the solution is stop being a beginner. And if you don't want to be a beginner, then you have to do what I suggest on this channel to reach your level of fluency, which is again B2 at a minimum, where you are upper intermediate. And only after you reach a upper intermediate level where you can understand the main ideas of complex text on both concrete and abstract topics, including technical discussions in their field of specialization. Maybe I'm overreaching and saying that B2 is too much, but I know for sure that you can reach the intermediate level by following what I suggest on this channel, which is the 375 hours, which are already packaged into a plan for you, which you can follow at the description of this video. Once you reach that level by going through complete Spanish step by step, listening to destinos, and remembering the content that's in those books and in those resources through flashcards and practicing and through practicing speaking, then you don't have to worry about purchasing things that are not yet on your level. So that's really all I wanted to say in this video. If you don't want to get cheated or scammed buying things that are for beginners, the only solution is to not be a beginner. Anyway, I hope this video helped. If it did, give this video a like. If you have your own definition of what it means to be a beginner, write that below in the comments. I would love to hear it. And if you don't want to be a beginner anymore, like I said, make sure you check out the link in the description to get that daily step-by-step task plan that I suggest everyone does, so you will no longer be a beginner. And to the next video, peace.